Long ago, beneath the silver gaze of the eternal moon, there existed a kingdom carved between silver mountains and endless forests. This was Lunaris.
It was well past midnight when the girl stirred. The house lay wrapped in a deep and ancient silence, broken only by the soft sigh of wind pressing against wooden shutters. Pale moonlight slipped through the narrow slats in silver ribbons, painting the stone walls in shifting shadows. 4-year-old Lumira lay still for a moment, her breathing slow and even. Then, as though guided by an unseen hand, her small fingers curled against the blanket and her eyes opened halfway, unfocused, distant, dreaming. She rose from her bed without a sound. Her feet touched the cold stone floor and did not flinch. The child moved like mist drifting through a valley, soft, setting, almost weightless. Her arms lifted gently at her sides, her head tilted as though listening to music that existed only in memory. Something ancient stared behind her glassy gaze, something older than childhood and deeper than sleep. She began to turn, slowly at first, then with a grace no one had ever taught her. Her night garment swayed as she spun across the room in silent circles, her toes tracing invisible patterns on the floor. A faint silver glow shimmered around her ankles before fading again. Out she went. Upward she moved, step after step, through the narrow passage. She climbed the narrow loft ladder that leaned into the darkness above, its ancient wooden steps polished by generations of passing feet. It was steep and almost vertical, leading toward a hidden opening in the roof. At the top waited a low wooden hatch bound with blackened iron. It groaned as Lumira tugged at it with a sort of alien strength foreign to a 4-year-old. It opened with a whoosh, releasing a sharp breath of cold night air and silver light that didn't seem to bother the child. The full moon hung low and enormous in the night sky, so bright it seemed alive. Its glow spilled across the terrace in liquid silver. Gathering at Lumira's feet as though calling her forward, the wind shifted. It grew sharper, restless, as though the night itself had sensed what was happening. In her chamber below, Iloria woke with a violent start. For a moment, she did not know why her heart was racing. Then she turned and saw the empty space on the bed. A cold dread unfurled inside her chest like a tightening fist. "Lumira," she whispered into the darkness. There was no answer. Panic came swiftly, fierce and primal. She threw aside her covers and ran barefoot into the hallway, her long gown trailing behind her like torn mist. Lantern flames flickered as she passed, shadows stretching and recoiling along the walls. Iloria rushed to the kitchen, but there was no one there. She checked the front door. It was bolted from inside. Just as she was about to go to her guardian's room, still calling her daughter's name in growing desperation, a faint sound reached her. The soft, uneven creak of old wood moving against iron. She froze. Above her, the narrow roof hatch swayed gently in the wind, opening and closing with a hollow whisper. Aloria's heart tightened. She hurried toward the steep wooden ladder and began to climb, the worn rungs cold beneath her trembling hands. When she pushed the hatch open, the night air rushed in, and she saw her. Lumira stood barefoot upon the uneven paving stones of the terrace, balanced dangerously near the low wall, her small form bathed in silver moonlight. Balanced lightly on one foot, arms raised, turning, 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 like a ballerina caught inside a dream. Her face was calm, almost joyful. Her eyes were empty, wide and luminous, a pale silver blue that caught the moonlight and reflected it back like quiet water. Her skin was a smooth golden brown skin that seemed to hold the memory of sunlight even beneath the night sky. Her hair fell in soft natural curls, loose and springing with gentle movement, dark as the deep night. Yet near her temple, a single striking patch of silver-white curls shimmered faintly, as though the moon itself had touched her at birth. Her lips were full and softly tinted rose, her expression delicate and distant, caught somewhere between dream and waking. There was something ancient in the way she moved, something older than her small body should have known. Aloria's breath caught in her throat. She did not know the dance, yet somewhere deep within her bones she recognized it. It was the ritual of the moon, a sacred movement not performed in generations. "Lumira!" she cried, her voice breaking as she ran forward. The girl slowed, turned, still half asleep. Aloria reached for her. In that instant, the trance shattered. Fear flooded the child's eyes. A frightened cry escaped her lips, and then she lunged. Small teeth sank into Aloria's arm with startling force. Pain exploded through her body, hot and blinding, but she did not scream. She gathered the trembling child against her chest, ignoring the warm blood now dripping down her wrist, and hurried back inside the house. "Help!" she called as she stumbled toward the bedroom. "Maeve, help me, please!" The door opened. Footsteps thundered as her guardian rushed to meet them. Yet even as Maeve took Lumira from her mother's arms, the wound began to throb with a deeper, stranger fire. Far across the sea, in a distant land still wrapped in pre-dawn grey, Darion jolted upright in his bed. A sharp gasp tore from his lungs. His hand flew to his neck, then his shoulder, then his arm. Every place he had once marked her burned like a brand. The connection had returned. Alive. Unbroken. He sat there, trembling, the name forming silently on his lips. She was alive. And this time, he would find her. Cold dawn light crept slowly through the wooden shutters, pale and uncertain, as though the morning itself hesitated to enter the room. Darian stood beside the hearth, motionless. The embers of last night's fire still glowed faintly, breathing soft red pulses into the dim air. Smoke curled lazily upward, carrying the scent of ash and damp wood. He had not truly slept, not since the dream, not since the pain had returned, sharp, electric, impossible to ignore. His fingers brushed the side of his neck. The skin there burned as if marked by invisible flame. He swallowed hard, staring into the dying fire as though it might reveal answers hidden within its glow. "She's alive," he murmured to himself, the words barely more than breath, a prayer, a confession, a curse. The quiet house listened. Down the narrow hallway came the soft sound of footsteps. Anya appeared first, wrapped in a thick woolen shawl, her graying hair falling loose around her shoulders. She paused in the doorway, studying him with eyes that had long since learned to recognize the storms he tried to hide. "You're leaving?" she said gently. It was not a question. Darian turned slowly toward her. The shadows beneath his eyes made him look older than his years. Something wild flickered deep within his gaze, something newly awakened and not yet understood. I felt her. Not in a dream, not this time. It was real, like a thread pulling me forward. His hand tightened into a fist against his chest. The bond never broke. Anya's expression softened, though worry lingered in the lines of her face. After all this time, I have to find her before I go to Astriel. I cannot leave this world without knowing. Behind her, another presence filled the room. Male stepped forward from the shadows, a sealed scroll resting in his weathered hands. His voice carried the weight of old truths. We always knew this day would come. He extended the scroll. You are not just a wanderer's son, Darian. You carry the last unbroken bloodline of a fallen king. Your true parents left this for you, to be given only when the wolf within you awoke. The parchment felt heavier than it should have. Darian took it with quiet reverence. Before he could speak, Anya moved closer. From within her shawl, she drew a small bundle wrapped carefully in faded cloth. She hesitated, just for a moment, as though remembering the fear she had felt the day it arrived. This came 4 years ago, she said softly. He frowned. From who? We don't really know him. He was cloaked when he found us at that old temple. He said your birth mother needed it to get to you. Her voice lowered to a whisper. He called you Wolf-born. Darian unwrapped the cloth slowly. Inside lay a half-circle silver amulet with inscriptions unlike anything he had ever seen. Its surface shimmered. The strange runic patterns had a pale whitish blue glow that shifted as though alive. The moment his skin touched it, a tremor ran through his body. Memory, longing, fire. He drew a sharp breath. What is it? He asked. Male's answer was simple. Guidance and warning. Silence settled between them. Then Anya reached out, placing her hand on his shoulder. Warm, grounding, steady. Go, she said. Find her. But remember, the Alpha's power runs in your blood now. Power without control becomes destruction. Fear flickered across Darian's face, but beneath it, resolve hardened like steel. I won't let it consume me. When he stepped outside, the wind caught his cloak and pulled it sharply behind him. Dawn had begun to paint the hills in pale gold, yet high above, the moon still lingered, faint, watchful, unwilling to fade. He did not know where the path would lead, only who waited at its end. And so his journey began. Darian left before the sun had fully risen. The sky was still pale with the last breath of night when he crossed the boundary of the settlement that had raised him. No farewell was spoken, no promise made. Something within him had already gone ahead, drawn toward a name he could not silence. For days he walked. Dust clung to his boots, and the wind carried the smell of dry grass and distant rain. He passed through scattered villages where strangers watched him with quiet curiosity. Children paused in their games to stare at the tall young man whose eyes seemed always fixed on something beyond the horizon. He did not linger. When night fell on the third evening, he left the narrow road and found shelter beneath a vast old tree whose roots gripped the earth like ancient fingers. There he gathered fallen branches and coaxed a small fire to life. The flames flickered against his face as he sat alone, listening to the endless chorus of insects and the low whisper of the wind. Sleep came in fragments. Sometimes he dreamed of silver light, sometimes of her. At dawn, he rose stiff and silent and continued into a neighboring town. Smoke curled from cooking pits and the smell of herbs drifted through the air. Near the edge of the square stood a small wooden kiosk, no larger than a storage hut. Bundles of dried leaves and roots hung from the open window, their scents mingling in warm, earthy layers. Several men sat on cut sections of tree trunk, cupping steaming clay bowls between their palms. Darian approached. The elder who kept the stall regarded him with kind, knowing eyes. Without asking his name, he poured a dark herbal brew and handed it across the counter. The warmth spread through Darian's chest as he drank, easing a tension he had carried for too long. When he reached for his coins, the old man gently pushed his hand away. You walk with a storm behind you, the elder said softly. Keep your strength. Your road is not yet finished. Darian inclined his head in silent gratitude and went on. Later that day, he joined a group of travelers heading south. Together, they crossed long rolling plains where the sky seemed endless and the nights were filled with cold, bright stars. They shared stories by torchlight, though Darian spoke little. His thoughts wandered constantly to the memory of a voice, a scent, a fleeting vision that had begun to fade like mist in sunlight. Still he walked, still he searched. Many days later, the land changed. Hills gave way to deeper valleys, and the air grew heavy with distant rain. It was there he first saw the iron tracks cutting across the earth like a line drawn by fate. The train waited in a cloud of steam and noise, a strange beast of metal and fire. With the money his parents had finally given him, the last gift from the woman who had brought him into the world, Darian purchased passage and stepped into a private cabin. The solitude felt both comfort and burden. As the train began its long journey, he sat by the window watching the landscape slide away. For the first time since leaving home, doubt crept into his heart. Had he imagined her? Had the near madness that followed their meeting been nothing more than longing given shape? Her scent had haunted him for weeks, wild and sweet and impossible to forget, until one morning he woke and found it gone. Now only memory remained. He reached into his travel bag for the small packet of food he had bought from a hawker on the platform. Instead, his fingers brushed against folded cloth. He knew what lay within before he opened it. Slowly, reverently, he drew out the pendant his birth mother had sent to him through the cloaked stranger. The purple stone caught the light like a fragment of twilight. For a long moment he simply stared. Then, as the train thundered toward an unknown future, Darian fastened the necklace around his neck.